The recording. So welcome all. Thank you for being here for the Dignity USA's candidate forum. Get to hear from the folks on the ballot running for the national board, running for the first time or running for re-election. Thank you for each of the candidates, and thank you for each of you all members for being here. And welcome to anyone also listening in the future. My name is Martin Witchker. I use he, him pronouns. I have the honor of serving as the vice president of Dignity USA. I will be finishing my term in a couple months, and I'm happy to hear from our new slate of candidate vice president and vice president as the rest of the board just in a few minutes. A few other housekeeping things, though, before we get to hear from each of our candidates. Yeah, here we are in an election season, right? Our ballots are out either in your mailboxes, or you should have received them. For a few of the get paper mail, or in your inboxes and email. Vast majority of folks should have received them in your email. And this is our chance to hear from those running for the board. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to Dignity USA, each one of you running. This is being recorded, so I'm glad to have many people live here, but there will be a chance to go back and watch it. It will be on our YouTube channel and soon, be available soon there. And let's see. Okay, a couple more announcements. There has been a few changes in our candidates. Mary Burns, you are here. Thanks for being here. Unfortunately, Mary has had some health issues and has withdrawn her candidacy. So folks who have gotten paper ballots, you will see Mary Burns's name on the ballot, but note there is an announcement here and that she is not running anymore. So you can move past that when you're voting. And if you do have a electronic ballot in your email, Mary should not be showing up on that ballot. So that shouldn't be an issue there. But thank you, Mary, for your service on the board currently for the last several years. And we're praying for your healing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you will see we have several of our candidates here. Unfortunately, there was another health emergency. Kate, one of our candidates, was not able to make it today either, but she is still running. We may have some of her responses here, but if not, you can refer to their candidate statement on our resources that were sent out with the ballot. So we are also thinking of Kate and as they recovered as well. But we do have Melly Barber, president, running as a slate with Daniel Baruda, vice president, Lori Myers, and Louis Lensmeyer. Thank you all for being here, for your candidacy, for stepping up, for committing to Dignity USA. The format, we have 1 hour, so we'll go to 4 p.m. Eastern. And each of the candidates will take turns introducing themselves. And then we have a few questions for whoever wants to answer, to hear from each of you, and then we will have open question time for the last 20 minutes or so. So, and if at any time any of you do have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. Ellen and I will be facilitating a Q&A at the end, the last 20 minutes. So feel free to wait for the end, or if you want to just put it in the chat and we'll get to it at the end as well, that works well. Anything else here? Of course, if we are a very verbose bunch, we might not get to all the questions. We might run out of time, but we appreciate your participation that way. And since we are in a virtual format, just to announce that if you aren't one of the candidates, please mute yourselves just so we can reduce background noise. Looks like we've got most of you all that way. Of course, when you are speaking, each of the candidates, please unmute yourself. We'll remind you if that happens. And of course, last minute, I'll remind you at the end too, but please vote. Voting is open. Again, ballots are either in your email, or a handful of folks get them in their mailbox. And the deadline is just over a month away, on August 27th. So you have a little over a month still to vote. All right, with that, I think that is all of our announcements. And let's get started to hearing from each of our candidates. Melly, would you like to start? Tell us about yourself and why you're running for re-election.
Yeah. So hello all. I think I've met most of you who are on this call, but my name is Melly Barber. I am in Indianapolis with my wife, Carly, my brother, who you might hear in the background. He's, I think, making lunch in the kitchen. And our two cats who may walk across the screen, and a tiny English bulldog as well. I've been involved with Dignity Indianapolis since 2008, and I have been on the board since 2019, most recently serving as your president for the last 2 years. Just a couple things about me. My first career was in parish ministry, so I have a master's degree in Catholic theology, and I worked in youth ministry and religious education for 8 years. I left that job so that I could propose to my wife and went back to school because apparently one master's degree was not enough for me. So I also have a master's in social work, and I currently work in child welfare. I'm a treatment director for a foster care agency. And then in my spare time, when I'm not doing dignity things, my wife and I also work with our local Catholic worker community that I founded, I don't know, almost 12 years ago now. Time flies so quickly. I have loved being part of Dignity. I often say that I feel like Dignity really returned me to myself. I've always felt a deep call to ministry, and it was one of the deepest moments of sadness of my life when I felt that I had to leave parish ministry so that I could get married. And so being able to be part of Dignity and being able to be of service to all of you, it's just been such a gift to me. And I hope that it's been a gift to you as well in the last couple of years. I hope that I've been able to do some good things for you all. I'm just excited to continue working with Dignity and to keep bringing us forward into our next 50 years to help us continue to be the strongest that we can be after the pandemic as we move into the next part of our history. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Melly. We'll move on to Daniel. Please share about yourself and why you're joining to be the vice president slate. And also I have a personal thank you as I have to step down from my time. Thank you for stepping up and joining the board as a vice president candidate. So please introduce yourself, Daniel.
Well, thank you, Martine. I've got some big shoes to fill. And like Martine said, up until a few months ago, I was the election chair. And then when Martine said he wasn't running again, I guess the Holy Spirit got involved. And here I am. But it's really, I've got a lot of gratitude, and it's really an honor to be considered for vice president. Anyway, I'm from California. I left there in '94 after leaving the Dominican Seminary and working in a great parish in the Castro Holy Redeemer. We had it going on, rocking and rolling. But when I got to DC, there was a void. I remember going to St. Dominic's since I was a Dominican, and I just couldn't stand it. It was just all old theology, all old school. But then I found Dignity Washington and DignityUSA, and both organizations have saved my spiritual life. Quickly became involved in the choir, joined the board a few years later in Dignity Washington, then got coerced into becoming president. Never thought I'd be the longest running president in our 50-year history, but I survived 5 years of incredible growth. And then I joined the DignityUSA board from 2017 to 2019, and was able to be at the Chicago conference where Chris Pett, the president of Dignity, asked people to volunteer for the Leadership Academy. So Mark Mattson and our friend from Boston raised our hands, and for 4 years we were working on the Leadership Academy. So it's really great to be here. Currently I'm in the choir, I'm an acolyte and a sacristan, and I've come up with a new liturgical term. You ready for this? So some nights I have to be both the sacristan and the acolyte. So now I'm either the sacolite or the acosac. I think I kind of like sacolite better. But anyway, it's great to be here. Got 34 years in federal service. I work at FEMA. I'm a walking disaster, and I just love people. And one theme I want that's going to carry me through everything I say, I think my biggest skill is a connector. So just keep that in mind as I answer the questions coming up. Back to you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Daniel. We'll move on to Lori. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lori Mayers, and I live in Southeast Michigan, outside of Detroit. And I identify as straight and cis, but I have a queer adult child, and have become involved in the PFLAG group. I'm one of the founding members of our Plymouth Canton PFLAG. So we started that 9 years ago. And I'm proud that we've been able to accomplish a lot. We helped through a lot of legwork and going to a lot of meetings. We got the school board to adopt a policy supporting trans kids. So it's a 5-page written policy supporting their right to use their pronouns and their names and the bathrooms that they want and to participate in sports. And we were able to do that in 2020. So I'll just say, and I have been a member of Dignity since 2020, when our Fortunate Families group went through a crisis here, where we were disinvited from meeting in our local parish, and the national group we were affiliated with kind of also abandoned us. So we were delighted to be embraced by DignityUSA and have become the Families with Dignity Caucus. So we've done a lot of work there and evolution. But I just want to say that although I am an ally and do not identify as queer, this work that I have been involved in for the last 9 years has changed my life, and it's been gratifying, and it's been humbling, and also the 2 years that I've been with Dignity has also been a great blessing, and has made me feel better about the Catholic Church and about the people who are in it. So my professional background is I studied communications and worked in journalism and public relations for a long time, and then got totally burned out on that and went to culinary school and have been working as a cook for 10 years. So thank you. And I've enjoyed my time on the board and hope to continue. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. And Louis, please tell us about yourself and your background, or how you came to Dignity, and a little bit more about yourself. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Louis Lensmeyer. He, him. I also answer to Louis or Lou. If you call me that, that's fine too. But I'm in suburban Minneapolis. I'm part of the Dignity Twin Cities chapter. We have been called Small But Mighty, and I truly believe that's what we are, what our chapter is. I serve as the secretary on the board there and such. So I've been part of Dignity now for a few years. I was aware of Dignity for quite a while and just decided to get more involved with that, because as much as people have told me through the years, the Catholic Church doesn't support you who you are, I just said, I'm staying. This is who I am. This is who God made me and such. So I just kept staying. And so I decided to bring that attitude and approach to Dignity. And it's been very fulfilling working with our Small But Mighty group and such. And so we just had Pride Minneapolis here, Pride Twin Cities a few weeks ago, and we always have a booth at Pride. And many people come up to us and say, I'm so glad you guys exist. I'm so glad I'm a lapsed Catholic. I left the church. I'm so glad you guys are there and pushing for change in the church. And so Dignity Twin Cities, Dignity USA has a purpose, and that is continued to push for change and inclusion within the church. So very glad to be here and be part of this discussion. Thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Louis. And thank you, each of you, for good to hear a little more about you. And those are our 4 candidates. We will now move on to some questions. Again, we do have one other candidate, Kate, but couldn't be here today. And since we do have just the 4 of you here, we do have a little more spaciousness so feel free to share more, and maybe there's room for each one of you to answer each question if you'd like. So our first question is, Dignity USA continues to advance issues of justice, equality, and visibility, inclusion of Catholics and the LGBTQI community. This work takes a lot of financial and human resources, right? So please share any thoughts, each of you, if you'd like to share any thoughts on how Dignity USA can amplify its development and fundraising efforts, as well as find new volunteers. So how can you continue to keep the lifeblood of our organization financially and bringing in new people and volunteers for our work? Whoever wants to go first. Yes, Daniel, thanks.
Well, gosh, I think, as we all know, foundations that target LGBTQIA religious people are few and far between. So I think what the board has been doing, and I know, is to help build partnerships with other organizations, ecumenical organizations, world organizations. I mean, Marianne has been relentless on international development. One aspect that I'd like to talk about, and it's directly related to my FEMA work, is work in the federal government. We have a really robust LGBTQIA plus employee group at FEMA. And several months ago, we had a forum on how to help LGBTQIA people during disasters. And it really sparked my interest, because we had a Baptist minister and a Presbyterian minister, both women, which were great. And there was no Catholic on the board, on the panel. And several people said, you know, I'm Catholic, I don't know where to go. And of course, I got on the chat and put in Dignity USA's website and all. But I think there's a lot of people who don't know about us yet. And in this current administration that's pretty proactive on inclusion, diversity, and equity, I think we have a couple more years at least to try and really build partnerships. I know at FEMA, when there's a disaster, we work with the Army Corps of Engineers, HHS, I mean, the whole myriad of federal agencies. I think we have a golden opportunity to make some inroads into the federal system and possibly into funding.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Go ahead, Melanie.
Martine, these are the questions that keep me up at night. I'm joking, but I'm also not joking, right? This is what I spend the majority of my time thinking about. How are we resourced for the next 50 years? You know, I think we have had such a remarkable first 50 years because we've had so many loyal members. And I think that includes all of you who took time out of your day to be here today. You're the ones who have sustained us for 50 years. And we can't keep going back to the same people over and over again for financial contributions, but also to be our only volunteers. Like, we have to bring new people in. I think one part of our strategy the last few years has been inspired by you, Martine, and something I've really learned from you, but really thinking about the different ways that people affiliate with Dignity. For some of us, that is membership. We feel deeply connected to the organization. We want to pay to be a card-carrying member. And for some people, it's that they support our work. You know, they want to affiliate with us, but they're not so interested in membership. And so I think it's continuing to look at the ways that we tap into people for whom membership is just not something that's exciting. And it's nothing to do with Dignity. It's just how maybe young people are. I'm not really a member of anything except for Dignity at this point, my parish and Dignity. But I'm not a member of a lot of organizations the way I think we historically have been in the past. So I think a lot of our future resourcing is thinking about connections, as Daniel said, but thinking about what those connections look like and not expecting there to be a one size fits all. Everyone is going to be a member and that's how we're going to move forward. I think we have to think creatively about who we can ask to support us both financially and as volunteers, which means thinking outside of the traditional queer Catholic bubble, whether that's thinking ecumenically, involving more allies, but just trying to reach a new audience of people. I have some dreams. I'd love to see Marianne be a guest on Being. I think that could reach a totally new audience on NPR who have never heard of us. I don't know how we make that happen. And then, as many of you know, our esteemed former treasurer, Linda Roberts, and I have joked for years about a campaign to tweet at Lady Gaga to get her to recognize us as well. So some unrealistic dreams, but I think that they're representative of what is real, right? Which is we have to think outside the box and we have to look for new people that we haven't tapped into before.
Absolutely. Thanks, Melly. Louis?
This is Louis. I'll answer next. I should have shared my professional background. My career has been in senior care on the vendor supplier side. I've worked for an electronic health record vendor for many years, building software and technology and working with partnerships and marketing and such. And in that sector right now, there is a specific focus on how do we cater to LGBTQ seniors within the senior care environment and at home, those who are remaining at home and such. And I know Dignity aligns with SAGE USA, who advocates for LGBTQ elders. There's a National Gay and Lesbian LGBTQ Task Force for LGBTQ folks there. American Healthcare Association, Leading Age Association are two national healthcare groups who focus on the senior care sector. They have had sessions at their national conference in the past of providers, senior care providers who have actually made a focused effort on, we do this for LGBTQ housing. These are the specific things we do. We allow them, I mean, they're free to hang their flags, everything that they want to do so that they're recognized and feel valued and appreciated and such. And so a lot of those groups have volunteer groups and have fundraising efforts and such. And SAGE has a whole fundraising effort as well, where I think we can probably tap into some of their resources, kind of, you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours, and kind of share some resources from there and such. And so, and also those senior care operators are evaluated by resident and family satisfaction, and that includes LGBTQ seniors. How are they being served and such overall? Are they being valued and accepted? And I think there's probably opportunity there to kind of tap into some resources. So thank you.
Louis. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, I think everything that everybody's saying has good points. I think in observing, how we've done and some of the efforts that we've made in the last couple of years, I've been impressed by some of the success we've gotten with, social media and outreach on particular issues. And I know that's largely due to Martine. But I think that we need to continue that. I think that some of the new technology that we're getting will help that. I am reading more about other queer Catholic groups. In the America magazine the last issue, there was a piece by Eve Tushnet, who used to work at Catholic Reporter, about work she's doing. And I think that the fact that Marianne and Sam were both able to represent at the outreach conference organized by Father James Martin. I think it's grassroots thing that we do, one step at a time and 5 people at a time by growing our mailing list. Like Melly said, maybe everybody doesn't want to join, but maybe they do support the work that we do, and they will give us a little, contribution. So I think it's a lot of grassroots effort. I think that partnerships with some of the groups, both religious and otherwise, other advocate groups are a good idea. We, for example, our PFLAG group got an email from Daniel Palmieri, who was trying to create a nationwide advocacy group for Catholic high schools. And he was unable to reach anybody by going through the high schools, but we were able to give him the name of people in Dignity Detroit and Families with Dignity who had been working on that. So I think, all of us on the board, as well as Marianne and Darby and everybody in all the chapters, needs to be thinking about how do we how do we work together and how do we spread our word and our work that way.
Thank you, Lori. And thank you all for sharing your thoughts on how we continue to expand financially and human and other volunteer people that are in our orbit. Our next question is a little more dream big and step back, and what brings you to the board and what brings you to committing to Dignity USA even deeper here? So, what do you have a sense of what issues or initiatives that you would like to commit to or work on during your term on the board? What brings you to running for the board, and what would you like to do when you're on it? Daniel, always jumping in, right? Thanks.
No, gosh. Well, I really love, on the Myers-Briggs, I'm an extrovert. So I really love people. I love connecting. Like I said, I love connecting people. I would really love to be working on the conferences, whether virtual or in person. Love that kind of stuff. And the World Pride event is going to be in DC in 2025. There'll be people from all over the world right here in my fair city. And if I can help at all, if elected, if I can help at all facilitate whatever we want to be present at that conference, that would be great. I literally live 5 minutes walk from the HRC building, and right next to our Dignity Center, right next to St. Margaret's where we have Mass, 6 blocks from the White House. So I could be a really valuable person on the ground organizing, and hopefully our Dignity Center will be renovated in time so that we can use it as a base. But the other thing I really am excited about is the Leadership Academy. Our participants, I know Jim is on, great people. 7 people went through the academy last year, and they're organizing. And it sort of relates back to the question number 1. They're trying to get more young people involved, especially with advocacy on all sorts of things, especially transgender issues. As we all know, transgender people are under attack right, left, and center. And I really want to help support them any way I can as a way of getting young people involved, not necessarily from the religious Catholic perspective, but what can young people do to help other people gain respect and that they deserve.
Thank you, Daniel. Who else would like to share about what you'd like to do when you're on the board, what initiatives or commitment? Lewis, I saw you come up mute.
So there's the synod process going on right now. Pope Francis has identified some individuals to become part of the synod process, and it's been hopeful. The bar is low, but it's been hopeful for LGBTQ folks. In Minneapolis, and many of the synod diocese documents did say we need to do a better job of reaching out to LGBTQ folks and making them part and acceptance of the church. Minneapolis, St. Paul did not mention LGBTQ folks, but we'll be here for 2 hours if I go into that. So, but anyways, but many dioceses have. So I would like to see how Dignity can support some of those supportive dioceses in what are you doing to ministering to LGBTQ individuals within the church? How can we help you with that? How do we internally hold them accountable to that? We also got to see what the results of the synod will be. I know that's going to be a while. So I think those are some of the things that I think we should follow up on and such, just about what Pope Francis has done there. And then also just continuing to making sure that, LGBTQ folks, they can find a home within the Catholic Church. There are individuals out there who align with you, who are supportive of you, and really making sure that that message has come out. I think the Beloved by God campaign is wonderful. It's a wonderful campaign, and similar campaigns like that. And so just making sure that message of acceptance and such. And it's even things like reaching out to those supportive dioceses who have, and I think Buffalo has a DEI statement, diversity, equality, inclusive statement, and doing some more work with them and such. And I think that's important. The Aging with Dignity Caucus is kind of a personal thing with me, just with my career, and just making sure expanding the capabilities of that too. So, thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Melly.
Yeah. Louis, thanks for mentioning the Beloved by God campaign. I have my Beloved by God sweatshirt on today, so
I should have worn mine. I had one too. So.
You can always hit up the Dignity store for more Beloved by God apparel. I'm a walking billboard, friends. No, I think one thing that I have been really focused on in the last, year or two that I'd like to continue working on is just continuing to think through what it looks like to be in community with each other. Pre-pandemic, we really had this model where we gathered as a national group in person every 2 years. And that was the conference was just the highlight of how we related to each other. And I certainly love the conference, and I'm excited to start working on the virtual gathering and the next in-person conference. But I think that COVID, and I've said this before, but I think COVID really gave us an opportunity to think about other ways that we connect to each other. So in the last year, we've been really trying to amplify some local events and have more of a national perspective on them. So we partnered with Philadelphia, with San Francisco for their Golden Jubilees, and really tried to promote that to the larger organization and get more people to be in person together. And kind of some of these local events. The Women of Dignity had an in-person retreat that was wonderful. And then thinking through what our virtual programming looks like. How is it that we gather virtually, and how do we make that a meaningful experience? We've been doing that with some book clubs. The Trans Caucus sponsored a couple speakers in the last couple of months. Which are phenomenally attended. Lots of new people that had never interacted with Dignity before showing up to some of these programs. And so I think this also connects to our first question, right? Of how do we draw in more people? I think in some ways it's the programming that we choose to offer so that might appeal to new people or that brings new people in. But I'm really interested in continuing to work through, what these community building experiences look like, whether they're in person. It's sort of more of a, I don't want to say regional, but in some of the local chapters where we're trying to gather more intentionally, whether it's a large intentional national gathering, it's the virtual gathering, or it's just the virtual programming that we offer regularly. How do we make this really meaningful? And how do we foster the connections between our members and our communities across the country?
Thank you, Melly. Lori, would you have anything to add?
Yeah. I think things that I would hope that I'd be able to work on in the next term would be our technology, so we've got a new CRM tool right now that we're just getting started with. We're going to be talking about redoing the website, which if any of you have spent any time with, that it can be pretty frustrating. I think but the point of doing those things is, as Melly said, to make a community, to make it easier to create a community. So I think it'd be great if all of the chapters and caucuses were able to have like a licensed Dignity Zoom account, because I'm kind of wrestling with that right now with the Families with Dignity and paying it out of my own pocket and stuff like that, But I mean, I just think it'd be, if it were easier for everybody to do that, it would help. I hope to continue working on the Trans Caucus. Nicole and I have been working on that the last few months. And we were really gratified by the number of people who came to the last couple sessions. We have another one coming up July 18th that I think everybody would find really interesting. We have as a speaker, a woman from Michigan who created a group called Stand with Trans when her son came out as trans 10 years ago. And what she has gone on to do is create an organization that has reached hundreds and thousands of trans young people and their families. And it's become not just Michigan based, but because of Zoom, they're able to connect with people all over the country. So we'll be doing that July 18th. I remembered something that I lived in DC for 2 years during the Obama administration. I went to St. Peter's Church on Capitol Hill there. And the pastor at that time would talk about fundraising, and he said, Well, this project is gonna require some money, but the good news is we have the money. The bad news is it's in your wallet. So, so I think that's the approach we have to take too. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Laurie, and thanks each of you. What a broad range and wide commitment and ideas to bring energy to the board. So thank you all for sharing those thoughts. We have one more question. I think we have time that we'll open. I'll ask, and then reminder, we'll have a good 15 minutes or so for questions from the rest of us. So feel free, if you have something that you've been thinking that comes up, put it in the chat or hold on to it for a few more minutes, either way. So our last question, and Melly, I think you were alluding, you talked about this a little already, but if anyone else wants to jump in, the pandemic has really, taught us a lot about virtual liturgies and virtual events, online events, to build connections and community in new ways. So curious to hear, should we keep pursuing this to attract current and new members beyond our existing communities? And do you have any ideas of what kind of programming or how to enhance or contribute to these current online programs or different ways of connecting online as a national community?
Well, I can start this time. I just want to say I absolutely believe that we need to continue to do virtual programming. I think that for a long time, we really relied on just geographic-based communities. And for those of us who are lucky enough to live in what I call a Dignity city, that experience of community is life-changing, right? My Dignity Indie chapter is so important to me. But we know that there are only chapters in, less than 50 cities across the United States. And there are so many people that need to hear who we are, what we stand for, and who need the experience of being part of a community like ours. And so I think that really the future, the way forward is to invest both in our local geographic communities, but also to be creating more opportunities for those who don't live in a Dignity city to be able to be part of our community, to participate in our work. And I think that's the beauty of our virtual programming. One thing that I have really loved about working with Martine when he was vice president is that although Martine has deep roots in geographic community, he now lives in North Carolina where he isn't part of a local Dignity chapter. And I think the perspective of having people on the board who align deeply with who Dignity is, but who don't live right in a community has been really helpful in thinking through, how do we connect with other people? I don't know that I have all the answers for what our virtual programming looks like. I think we need to lean into the things that we do really well. We know that we do liturgy well. I will be the first one to say that I didn't think a virtual liturgy could be very meaningful, and I was very wrong. When the pandemic started, I thought this is not going to be church. I don't understand how this is going to work. But I've had some really powerful experiences in virtual liturgies. With Dignity New York, Dignity Washington, with the board, with different things that USA has put on. And so I think that liturgy is something that we do well. Spiritual reflection is something we do well, and we should continue to do that. I know some of our communities have really excelled in just fellowship online. The Women of Dignity come to mind as a group that really leaned into just building friendships and did that extraordinarily well. And I think we can learn some lessons from them as we do programming on a national level. So I don't know that I have all the answers for what that programming looks like, but I know that we need to invest in it because I really think that this is where we continue to grow and how we continue to draw new people in, which again continues to relate back to all of these questions. They're so interconnected. I think our virtual programming is one of the keys to how we bring in new volunteers, how we bring in new money, how we reach new people, how we grow a stronger community. All of these things are connected in my mind.
Would one or two of the other candidates like to add anything?
Well, at Dignity Washington, I just want to give a shout out to our group. We've been televising the Mass from the very get-go. And Martina, if you remember back in the good old days, it was a labor-intensive labor of love. They would gather every other Tuesday. They would take 2 masses from 7 to about 11 o'clock at night at the church. Luckily, St. Margaret's put in some major improvements about 1.5 years ago, and we've been able to use their videography much more efficiently. But we've reached so many people. And I know the New York people have reached a whole international crowd. I think Boston too. You guys have reached tons of people, not only in our country, but other countries. It's super important. And like Millie said, you know, for our national members who are not near a chapter, at least they have an access to a homily and a singing and seeing people that really care about each other. It's really important. What we probably need to do at Dignity Washington too is maybe expand how we use the virtual things and other things that we offer. But again, my one Achilles heel, I have several, but I'm a technical Luddite, so I'm not the person you want programming your virtual meeting, and Martine can testify to that. Anyway, that's it for me.
Very good. Thanks, Daniel. Go ahead, Louis, I see you help you.
Yeah, I'd also continue virtual programming, and maybe in those, I'm fortunately in the Dignity area with Dignity Twin Cities, and you know, there's been last couple of years some things that have gone on with the Marquette Diocese and things going on with Sioux Falls Diocese and such, and we've reached out to contacts there who may have needed us and used us as a resource about just ideas that, you know, just to let them know that we're there to support them in any way we can. But I think virtual programming into those dignity desolate areas, I think I just invented a term, some of that where there's a higher population. And I know some of those areas may have had dignity chapters in the past that have since existed, but still reaching out to those areas and offering some virtual programming, whether it's, you know, finding like Roman Catholic women priests to, you know, do a liturgy or something, you know, something different like that, and just educating them on some of those resources that are available and introducing members from across the country or something. Maybe it's like the chapter president from each area or something, but I think just introducing dignity through virtual programming in those other areas where there's a higher population. So there's a likelihood where there could be some more interest within Dignity USA. So.
Thanks, Louis. I do want to get to other questions, but Lori, if you have a brief
I would
answer too, feel free.
Yeah, I would just add that I think we do have to balance. Obviously, this technology has made so many things possible, but you know, not everybody's comfortable with it. Some people just won't do it, and so, you know, obviously there are great benefits to meeting in person and being able to hug somebody and do those things. So, you know, but as we go forward, I think, you know, the technology is going to have to become more and more important.
Thank you. All right, well, those were the questions we had prepared, and thank you all for your answers. Do you want to open the floor for questions from others that are present? Please feel free to take the time to write it in the chat, or I think we're a small enough group too, if you want to quickly raise your hand to come off mute and share it. But I just do want to, while any questions coming in, I don't see any others, but I see, Mary, your questions about being able to get any Kate's answers to these. Our candidate wasn't able to make it. And we'll do our best. She did have an emergency, so she wasn't able to be here. We want to give her that grace, but if she's able to answer some of these questions, we will be able to provide it. But there is a statement from her as part of the materials for the ballot, so we have hear a little bit from her. Yes. Tom Bauer, is that a raised hand?
That is a raised hand.
Okay, a thumbs up, raised hand. Awesome.
Yes.
You have a question? Okay.
And it's very good to see you, Martine, and thank you for all you've done the last few years. We have missed you and the other half as well. But one of the things that, regarding the last comment about 1 million years ago, dignity was divided into regions so that people within a certain amount of proximity who can, it's great, and we would welcome everybody to come to the Dignity Washington Mass, but not everybody can do that. But there are chapters that are closer by. So I think we should encourage people to, for all of the various groups that offer mass and other spiritual things, encourage people to participate in that. We've certainly found that we get a very broad audience, broader than we thought we would. To also provide options of, chapters that do we still have a Chicago chapter?
Yeah.
Okay, so Chicago and Indianapolis could plan a weekend together over a Saturday night. And maybe Dayton isn't that far away. So I would like to see us at least conceptualize on doing things that, yes, I think that the future is electronic, but to build that rapport is a very important thing we need to think about.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, great point. Anybody have any responses or Melly, I think I was going to think about our recent, as you alluded to, Philadelphia and San Francisco celebrations. Do you want to share more about that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Thomas, I think you're absolutely right. We need to be encouraging collaboration between our chapters, between our communities. And from a national perspective, that is something that we have wanted to amplify. So this past year, we have just been experimenting, dipping our toe in, and very intentionally working with Dignity Philadelphia and then Dignity San Francisco to really elevate their Jubilee celebrations and invite the wider community to participate. And in both of those Jubilee celebrations, we had people from a number of nearby chapters who did travel in for that weekend. And so I think that's the beginning of what you're alluding to, right? These greater partnerships between communities that are geographically close to each other. And certainly as someone in Indy, I would love to work with Chicago on some kind of weekend something. So I do hope that's in our future. I think we share that vision.
No, that's exactly what he talked about. It did work very well. Now, again, many of the people here were born then, but a lot weren't. But it was something that, pressing the flesh, so to speak, does work.
I would just be sure you include Detroit in your Chicago Indy
Yes
group. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So Detroit's 50th anniversary is next year. So I would love to hear, some of your best practices.
Twin Cities is next year as well. If you have any, so we're already talking about that. If you have any, what you've done. So
great, and
Yeah,
your voices on the board will help perhaps make those connections and plan that. Melly, sorry, interrupted you.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think after the success of Philadelphia and San Francisco, I'm excited from a USA perspective to work with both of your communities to think about, what your Jubilees could look like and how we can invite the greater Dignity community to be part of that and participate and celebrate with you. So I'm really looking forward to your Jubilees next year.
Mary, I see your hand. Go.
Martine, I was just going to say that I think it's really good that Dignity USA lists the times of liturgies with different chapters, because at Living Beatitudes here in Dayton, we often get people from out of state joining us on our Zoom, because we have an in-person every Sunday, but we also Zoom every Sunday. And oftentimes we have people from out of state. So I think that's a practice that is really good for Dignity to keep putting out there, and people can kind of explore and go to different parts of the country for liturgy if they like.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom, for that question and spurring discussion there. Any other questions from folks? You can put in the chat or virtually or physically raise your hand and I can call on you. Questions for our candidates? In a few more minutes.
Martine, so tell, now that you're getting off the board, how do you feel about your time on the board? What are you taking away from that, and how it's going to help you and Chris in the future?
You're in the hot seat, Danielle. I don't know if this is about my I'm looking at Marcia's quote before I answer. See anything other questions from folks? Okay, yeah, Marcia, I see you're being liturgy is available on the website. That is a wonderful idea. And as Lori also mentioned, we are looking at revamping our website to make it easier for staff administration and user friendliness. definitely a possibility. And I know social media also helps with sharing different liturgies from around the country. To your question, Daniel, yeah, I have been 6 years on the board. It has been an amazing experience. I know I have learned a lot and grown a lot, and that I've contributed ideas and see things come to fruition and bring us to the next chapter. I did get a new job, and that is that's been a big space for me. So I'm glad to make a little more space in my life for that and explore our life. Yeah, for Chris and I here in North Carolina in a new way. We do have a great faith community here that is also looking for my energy and time too. So just trying to spread as I can and do what I can. So, but definitely, I'm here and I'm a resource. Definitely, I'm not going far. You know how to contact me, as I told everyone. I see your hand, Tom. I'll make sure
Okay.
and give any space for anyone else if anyone else has a
Yeah,
question.
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
I was just responding to the question about anonymity. We've had that question and dealt with it at Dignity Washington, simply saying, you know, if you don't want to be seen on film on the far left, please be seated, and sort of self-regulating. And I will also say that as somebody who's been a member for almost 50 years, we have never had any untoward repercussions. I mean, maybe we've just been lucky, but to a certain degree, it is a new day. You know, our work has been rewarded in that we are not the onerous creatures that are portrayed. So we haven't had bad experiences. Tomorrow we may, but at least it isn't a concern that people have been afraid of.
Thanks, Tom. I
Yep.
had missed that part of the question, so I'm glad. Thanks for responding to. John, yeah, you have a question for the candidates?
Yeah, thank Martine. Thank you all for what the gifts of your candidacy for our national board. You know, I'm very impressed. I'm really inspired by what I'm hearing this afternoon in terms of such commitment, such enthusiasm, such wonderful ideas and intentions. My question is do any of you have any thoughts about the more global connection that Dignity has begun to make, primarily through the global network of Rainbow Catholics and Marianne's leadership on that. We speak a lot about you know, our internal energy and internal concerns, and we think a great deal about connecting across the country on different chapters and communities. What about the global connection that Dignity USA has begun to nurture? Does any of you have any thoughts about that, or where it might go?
It's a very timely question, John. This morning, Marianne and I and a couple others from USA were attending virtually the ordinary assembly of the global network this morning. So I spent my morning seeing faces from across the globe, which was a really beautiful way to begin my Saturday. You know, I think investing in the global network is certainly something that's really important. I'm grateful for Marianne's leadership. And I think we have a real opportunity now that she's also serving as one of the co-chairs of the global network to continue to be involved. But I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I think it needs to continue to be a priority. I know some of our individual chapters have formed partnerships with different groups around the globe. And that might be an avenue to continue to pursue and explore to intentionally match some communities. But certainly, I think the global network is a really valuable and important part of our work. I don't think that fully answered your question. I don't think I know the answer, but I know it's important.
Yeah, and I would just tag on to that. Again, World Pride in 2025 is going to be here in DC. If we can really organize something, some major, whether it's a mass or a forum or a series of seminars or anything, just to let people know that there are gay LGBTQIA Catholics organized, and we're here to support them.
We are running really short on time. I have just a minute or so to close, so we have just a minute or two left. If anyone else has a response or a question, Bob Mialovich, did you have a question? I saw your hand raised briefly earlier.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, you have a quick, brief question, and one or two candidates can answer.
Quick one. I am very intrigued these days by the growth, well, Jim Martin's outreach effort, the stories about St. Paul and New York. What is the challenge to Dignity in these more acceptable, more church acceptable organizations to our more independent thinking, if I can put it that way? Are we in competition, or do we have a sharing arrangement here?
Yeah, good question. Any of our candidates have thoughts, reflections on that?
I mean, I think that dignity and outreach both have different roles in the world. I think one thing that sets dignity apart, and that I think is a real pro, like a gift that dignity has, is that the only people that we are responsible to is our members, because we are not trying to to have the bishop's approval, right? Like, we don't go to the bishop before we make a statement. We come to you, our members. I think that gives us a freedom to be really clear about who we are and what we believe, that perhaps organizations that organize primarily with outreach don't have. I think we have a freedom that James Martin doesn't have, because we're not responsible to a superior, we're responsible to you. At the same time, because of that, we're not as widely known, right? Jim Martin is able to advertise in every Catholic church in America because he does have the support of the Pope and of his superiors and of his bishop. And so I think we have different roles and different challenges. I think, there's work that we both do that complements each other, but we have really different ways of existing and different roles in how we get that work done.
Go ahead.
And I also am very intrigued by the fact that Dignity was invited for the first time to participate in the outreach conference. And I think that shows the strength of our prophetic voice, right? When our Families with Dignity group was formed, we joined Dignity because they allowed us to say exactly what our mission was. Right. And our mission was to support unconditionally our LGBTQIA family members and loved ones. And it was to work for reform within the church, to recognize all legal marriages, and to revise its teaching on sexuality. So I think that the prophetic voice that Dignity has had for the last 50 years is extremely slowly moving the church forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Lori. We're going to have to leave it there. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you all. Thank each of the candidates, Melly, Daniel, Lori, Lewis. Thank you for your commitment, for your dedication to dignity, for your putting yourself forwards for the board, and for your responses today. And thank you each of you else for being here to listen and ask questions and engage. Reminder, again, voting is open. The ballots either in the mail, a few of you that get in the mail, or the rest in your email inboxes. There will be reminders going out. You have a little over a month. The deadline is August 27th. If someone could quick look what day of the week, that might be helpful for some of us, but August 27th. And if you are sending in by mail, we need to be, Dignity needs to be, has received it by then, not postmarked, but received it by 27th. So get in the mail sooner than later if you are mailing in your ballot. Otherwise, online voting ends on the end of that day as well, on the 27th.
It's a Sunday, Martin.
Sunday, August 27th. Thank you. So yes, please vote. And when you are voting, you are selecting a slate for vice president and president, so Melly and Daniel, or write-in, and then also up to 2 at-large candidates, and there will be 3 on the ballot. So 2 at-large candidates are what we'll be voting for. So thank you all for being here. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend and Saturday afternoon. And thank you all. We'll see you at another Dignity event soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.